I'm happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation, Martin Luther King Jr. I first heard of this speech in history class. This speech explains the times what was happening to not only African Americans, but any person of color in America. First, I will talk about the historical context in which this speech was given. Then, I will focus on the message delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. And finally, we'll look at the way it was delivered and the way it was received. First, let's talk about the historical factors that led to this speech. More than 40 years ago, August 1963, MLK Jr. changed American history with "I Have a Dream," his most famous speech, that he delivered on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. August 28, 1963, Dr. King Jr. presented his speech, March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom Group. The purpose of the march was to advocate for the civil rights movement and for African Americans. The march was one of the largest political rallies to have ever existed. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the most famous founders of the American civil rights movement. He led a very active political life for a long time. Now that I reviewed the historical context that led to the speech, I'll focus on the essence. "I Have a Dream" by Martin Luther King Jr. is a powerful and passionate call for equal rights for not just African Americans, but for any POC, people of color, in America. The larger point he's attempting to make with his speech is that Black people are not demanding anything lavish or privileged, but that we demand equality in a place that we live in. Now, I explained what the speech was about. Now I'll focus on how it was organized, delivered, and received. We'll start with how it was received. Martin Luther King Jr., he received multiple people backlashing and trying to hurt him and his family for this speech because they did not want equality. They wanted to be above. Right from the beginning, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. brings you back to the beginning of America, to slavery, where Black and African Americans were tortured, beaten, raped, killed just for the color of their skin. And this one part of the speech makes everyone emotional, and it stands out. I will now quote it for you. "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." It was so inspiring. It changed many. It changed me, and that's for sure. In conclusion, I talked about historical context. I talked about the way he delivered it. I talked about history. I talked about everything. But all that matters is this speech, it can change lives. And I believe that every child in America needs to know it. Thank you.